There are plenty of rich people in the world, but not many live like you. So before we even begin, hats off to you, sir.
The goal is to make a couple $1 billion this, and then I want to be president.
You want to be president of the United States?
Yeah, I think I can do it.
I want to live right now when I can do whatever the I want. Nobody tell me broke.
So I was just like, it was a wild ride.
Dan Bilzerian, once hailed as Instagram's ultimate alpha, with his thick beard, sculpted body, and iconic glare behind clouds of cigar smoke, became the poster boy of digital age excess for an entire generation of men. His rise to fame was a spectacle of yacht parties, luxury mansions, rare supercars, flashy weapons, and an entourage of models, a fantasy few could touch, let alone live. But the cracks were always there. Even with Dan doubling down on his confident image on X, the fallout hit hard. 120,000 followers gone. March 31st, 2024 was the worst. Over 5,400 people unfollowed him in a single day. In 6 months, he lost more than 60,000 followers. That mass exit sent stock prices tumbling, eventually forcing his company to delist from the exchange. Now, Dan's pivoting, taking a page from Andrew Tate's playbook and launching Sigma Society, a brand offering self-help content for men. But the worst was still ahead. The lavish parties, supercars, luxury lifestyle, many of them faked. The Instagram king's persona unraveled. Then came a blow from regulators. The SEC opened an investigation into his finances. Things got personal in 2024. Dan filed a lawsuit against his own father, the man he publicly insisted had never helped him financially. The claim? That Paul and other shareholders schemed to remove him from Ignite, the brand he once embodied. How did Dan Bilzerian, expelled from high school for bringing a gun to school, briefly enlisted in the Navy, and once living what seemed like a fantasy, become the internet's cautionary tale, exposed as a fraud? Let's rewind. In July 2020, just 18 months after founding Ignite, Dan fired its president, Curtis Heffernan, a former senior exec at Procter & Gamble. But Heffernan didn't go quietly. He sued Dan for wrongful termination, and in doing so, revealed the machinery behind Dan's empire. The lawsuit claimed Dan didn't actually buy the $65 million mansion he boasted about. It was actually leased for $200,000 a month. And when that truth came out, the internet exploded. Turns out, Dan didn't own it, he was just renting. And that flashy six-figure lifestyle? It was all on a credit card, one that someone else was paying off. Later, Forbes revealed Ignite had lost $50 million the previous year, and the company was spiraling. But what really sent the internet into a frenzy was the timing. Just a week before this all surfaced, Dan gave Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary a house tour, proudly claiming it was his. Kevin asked a basic question about tax write-offs. Dan froze and responded awkwardly, "Can you write any of this off, since it's promoting your brand and lifestyle?" Dan, I'll have to ask my accountant. Not really sure. Then came another shock. The beautiful women and massive crowds shown in Dan's videos? Not actual friends. They were paid models, costing $26,000, labeled as image promotion in Ignite's expense sheets. And it just kept unraveling. Financial reports showed Ignite was footing nearly $900,000 for Dan's lifestyle. The excuse? As long as the company logo appeared on everything, it was a business expense. It was clever, but obviously questionable. Heffernan, the company's president, said he was pressured to sign off on these expenses. He refused. He even warned Dan to stop paying $200 for the mansion, especially with COVID restrictions banning big parties. Dan's answer? He made himself chairman and declared he'd throw even more parties and keep the mansion. The next day, he accused Heffernan of drug use at a meeting, a completely baseless claim that got Heffernan fired in June 2020. Ignite had no comment. Dan brushed it off when TMZ reached out. Ironically, the people who stood by Heffernan weren't reporters. They were anonymous insiders from Ignite. They confirmed it. The company paid for everything Dan wanted, no matter how ridiculous, as long as it boosted the brand. Every luxury post, just another investor-funded invoice. And when media started asking questions, Dan fired back on X. Journalists say Ignite funded my life? I've been living like this for 10 years. Been famous for 7. Started Ignite 2 years ago, raised $100 million, and I'm the majority owner. Suck my, but the numbers told a different story. In 2020, Ignite lost $69 million. It only brought in $9.7 million in revenue. The stock dropped from 2.5 THU to just 28 cents, a 90% crash. Dan responded again, this time comparing Ignite to Uber. Uber's worth $80 billion, never turned a profit, lost $5 billion in one quarter. The difference? Uber didn't spend $75,000 on paintball setups or rent mansions for live streams. So what actually brought Ignite down? It wasn't just about money. Heffernan's lawsuit exposed the core issue. Dan's lifestyle was all for show. The jets, the mansions, the parties, rented or borrowed. And once people realized the illusion, fans started disappearing. By May 2020, Dan's Instagram went silent. And for a guy whose whole image lived online, that was a big red flag. The fall had begun. Rumors swirled. Was Dan finally going broke? Dan posted a meme of a skeleton with the caption, "All those dumbass journalists still waiting for Ignite to go bankrupt." It was defiant. But behind the scenes, the numbers kept telling a darker story. In 2019, Ignite lost $69 million. In 2020, another $9 million. Then another bombshell. Dan's father, Paul Bilzerian, was reportedly running Ignite behind the scenes. Why does that matter? Because Paul's got a history. A former corporate raider, convicted of fraud in 1991, fined $62 million, jailed for a year, and only paid back $3.7 million, claiming he was broke. Dan tried to downplay the connection. Talk to him? Maybe 4 or 5 times a year, but emails said otherwise. Thousands of messages from Paul to Ignite staff, allegedly guiding business decisions, despite being banned for life by the SEC from running public companies. And if that's true, it wasn't just illegal, it was almost poetic. Because ironically, Paul's cost-cutting may have saved Ignite for a while. After cutting ad spending by 75%, Ignite reported its first ever profit in late 2020. The mansion parties were gone. COVID helped reduce costs. And in 2021, the stock rebounded from 28 cents to 1.11. Dan came back to Instagram, teasing a potential sale of the company. But illusions don't last forever. By 2022, Ignite's value tanked again. The show was over. The SEC filed a lawsuit claiming Ignite failed to hand over key documents during a fraud investigation. Regulators suspected Ignite had inflated revenue numbers during its so-called comeback. The stock crashed again. Dan? Dead silent. He quietly delisted Ignite from the exchange. And then, in 2025, the twist no one expected. Dan sued his own father. Even though Paul helped revive the company, Dan accused him of a corporate coup, saying he was kicked off the board and his image was misused. He's now demanding $50 million in damages. But this lawsuit revealed something deeper. A battle not just over money or power, but between image and reality, between fame and truth, between father and son. Dan once lived like the main character in a Hollywood fantasy, a hero in his own Instagram movie. But then the screen went dark. And on the Skinny Confidential podcast, Dan offered a rare moment of honesty. "I'm tired of being hated." That single sentence said a lot about the cost of building a life around illusion. Now he's launching a new project, the Sigma Society, a program for real men led by someone whose past was built on filters, leases, and logos. So the question is this a comeback story or just another performance in a different costume?